let's introduce ourselves.
Great.
And then we'll start talking. I'm Brad Rourke, class of 1983, and you are?
I'm Marko with a K. I'm not Italian. Slusarchuk. And I'm class of 1970, the second graduating class of Roper.
The second graduating class. How many were in your graduating class? Do you remember?
Yes, I do exactly. The difficulty with graduating in that class was there were only 9 of us. So when the college asked if you were in the top 10%, nobody was. The best you could do would be in the top 11%.
That's right.
And basically, when I started Roper, they only went through to the 8th grade. Then they kept on adding a year every year. And the first class in 69 graduated from Roper, and I was in the second.
You've had a fascinating career. You've been a scientist, an attorney. How did you get here? An entrepreneur, indeed. How did you get from there to here in the DC area?
Well, it's been a long pinball route. I mean, I spent 9 years at MIT as an undergraduate and graduate, and 3 years in the Boston College and law school. So I lived all that time in the Boston area. Then I moved back to Michigan for a short stint, where I worked for a company that was looking for technology. And then I got married and we moved to California.
Where in California?
In the Bay Area, Silicon Valley.
Okay.
I was playing the Silicon Valley lottery.
Yeah.
And Normalyn and I, we moved there. And then she got a job offer that she couldn't turn down, and we moved back here.
How is it that you came to begin giving back to Roper?
It's very simple. I would not be here if it were not for Roper. I would not have had courage and conviction to apply to MIT. I mean, it would have been such a stretch from where I came from to do that I look at Roper opening my eyes, introducing me to way different world. You have to remember, I came to Roper from a parochial school where there were 52 kids in my class. I mean, it was a very different environment. And you come to a school where there's like a handful of students, you just kind of said, oh my God, this is a whole different world.
Yeah.
And so Roper was what got me out of Hamtramck and put me on the road. It's been a long road.
Thinking about Roper, what would you say are the most important aspects of Roper that need to be nurtured and conserved as we move forward?
I think the way it instills confidence in people is very important. And I sort of wish it had retained as much focus on gifted education and, retained its uniqueness in that part of the educational system. I mean, I've run into people halfway around the world that have heard of Roper and have heard of it in the sense of where it stands in the educational mindset.
For me, that focus on giftedness was so important for me, not fitting in where I was as a kid and coming into that. But also that sort of humanitarian core that it has was been really important to me as well.
It developed you as a person, is what I would say. It made you grow. I mean, I'll be honest. Roper was the first time I ever met a Black person. I had never spoken to one other than in a store or such. I mean, it was an intersection of people in my life that I had not dealt with in previously. So it was an eye-opener.
Now you went on. We'll fast forward a little bit. You ended up serving on the board in the 2000s. What were the 2000s? Let me write it down here. 2007 to 2011. What were the major challenges that you remember?
A lot of the challenges at that time obviously were financial, and how does Roper survive with a limited number of alumni means you have a limited number of donors. I mean, so that there's a penalty you pay for small class size if you're an institution. So that was a lot of things that were on people's mind then.
And how did you start to give to Roper?
I actually don't remember my first contribution, but we, both my wife and I, are very strong supporters of education. My wife served as the president of the board of trustees of Goucher College, which was what gave her break in life. She was a farm girl from the Eastern Shore, went to a 3-room schoolhouse, I think with 8 or 9 children in the whole school. And so we both had similar backgrounds in the point that we got a break through education. We picked education as our focus point for our charitable focus.
At what point do you remember Roper becoming an important focus in your philanthropy?
I think I always, as far back as I can remember, I gave to Roper. More modestly in the beginning, more generously as it became possible.
Mm-hmm. Now, at one point, you established, and I'm gonna say it, but I'm probably gonna get it wrong. So correct me. Zoroslava Sluzarchuk Endowment.
Very well.
Thank you so much.
That was very well said. I know you practiced it.
I did. Tell us about what that is.
I'll tell you what that is. What that does, it funds student travel. And the roots of that idea went back to, I believe it was in eighth or ninth grade. My father, who was an attorney in Ukraine, had to work as a printer at the Detroit Free Press because law just doesn't transfer. It's a different legal system and a different language, and you have to feed the family. So one year when the paper was on strike, there was no way my parents could afford for me to go on the class trip. And I believe it was Washington. I'm not sure which city it was at that particular trip. And I was all resigning not to go. And Dick Halsey came to me privately and said, "You're going on a trip and somebody paid for it."
And you wanted to replicate that.
Absolutely.
For others.
Sorry, I'm a little bit wrong. That's not fair.
Sorry.
But that meant so much to me that I was not going to be different than anybody else.
And when we were earlier talking about that, and you mentioned how low key it was.
Yes, I mean it was very,
no fanfare.
No fanfare, very subtle, just between him and me.
Yeah.
And nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
It allowed me to retain dignity.
What a gesture.
It was.
And to give it back.
I don't think anybody should have to, how would I say, not participate because they can't afford it.
And that's really the Roper way.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can do that, that's going to be.
And that was one of those moments that I vividly remember.
Mm-hmm. We were talking earlier, and you were describing how you didn't want your giving to be peanut butter.
Yeah.
What do you mean by
that? You know, spreading stuff around is nice, and that's what I mean by peanut butter. You just spread a thin layer, but it doesn't make impact. And that's why when I established the testamentary trust, where its purpose is to set up a scholarship, and it's going to be an absolute full scholarship, not money for the scholarship fund to be distributed among multiple recipients, but one recipient will get a full ride, 100% tuition paid for. And I believe I also put in an allowance for some other incidentals that sometimes, if you don't have the money, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. The kind of student that it's aimed at is what kind of student?
I sort of did a look in the mirror on that one. And the first choice for this award is a son or daughter of immigrants, preferably from Ukraine.
So some of the principles you're using are give with impact.
Absolutely.
Replicate or do things resonant with the experience that you had.
Very much so.
And in line, of course, with the Roper philosophy.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm that far at all from the Roper philosophy.
Mm-hmm. So if you were like talking to your 17-year-old self, your senior, about to graduate.
Oh God.
And you were saying, and you were going to give that person advice, not life advice, but like advice about their relationship with Roper that's going to come down the pike, where they're going to go. What would you say to them? This is a hard question to answer, but what would you say?
So you do not know where you'll be. If you think you know where you'll be, you're wrong. You know, life is both full of opportunities and full of potential disasters. And careers that exist today didn't exist when I was at Roper. Think internet, think all the other stuff. So you don't want to have your mind made up early, because that way you close opportunities. If you've decided on a particular path and you try to stick to the straight and narrow, you're not going to take that opportunity that pops up in front of you because after all, you're focused on your goal. So keep your eyes open, keep looking to the left and right, and take the road that all of a sudden appears and appeals.
I want to ask you your advice for younger alumni in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s as they're beginning to think about their philanthropy to Roper and supporting Roper. What kind of advice would you give people like
I
them?
think COVID woke people up. You're not going to die when you're 80. You may die when you're 20. So, it made us aware of our mortality. And with that in mind, you have to admit to yourself that you may not die on your schedule you're putting yourself on. So take care of the loose ends. How many people don't have a will or a trust or any kind of testamentary document? And guess what? Things go very differently. When I was in law school, on the first day of my trust in estates, this guy, he must have been himself 90. He would lecture sitting at the table and just his mouth moved, nothing else. And he opened the day and said, if you think people fight when they're alive, wait till someone dies. Things may not happen with your estate that you expect to. I mean, I was just showing you the mess around here. I'm going through all the photographs that I've accumulated over 50, 60 years, sorting them and giving them to people. We don't have children, so they either would get trashed or would wind up in an estate sale with somebody rummaging through your personal stuff. Think about it that way. Go to an estate sale. Look at that. These are people's lives, their diplomas, their bar mitzvah certificates and all that. And that's being looked at as a commodity. Think about that. Do you really want that to happen to your things you've cherished all your life?
Give for impact, resonant with Roper philosophy, and pay attention to planned giving because you don't know how long you have.
You don't know how long you have, and your plans may not correlate with what nature has planned for you.
I cannot imagine better advice. Marko, it's been a delight to talk to you. I'm so excited to be with you.
Great. It was great meeting you after all.
You too.
So take care and stay healthy. Because
Thank
today, that is the greeting that's the most important.
Same to you, and thank you from Roper to you.